Less than 2 months after this coaching call, Austin got his first actuarial job. And that means with these 10 tips in mind, you may be able to as well. Austin has been a math teacher for the past 11 years. He's passed exam P and FM, and he did have an interview last year, but it didn't get him a job. We do talk about that during the interview. He's also been working really hard on his tech skills over the past year to help improve his qualifications in that area. Now, let's get into this coaching call.
One thing I guess I'll throw out there first is so early in February, I had an interview. And even just by the way I think I carried myself, one of the comments that they said was, they said the only reservation we have is we don't want to pull you out of teaching. And they meant that as a compliment. And it seemed like things were going pretty well. And then they decided it ended up not moving forward. And so I guess that had me walking away with how are the ways that I can represent myself as a future actuary and not as someone who's just a really good teacher. And so rather it's just the way the examples or the what's on my resume or whatever. That's kind of the place I'm feeling I need to grow the most.
And now we get into the first tip, which is to make sure that you are representing yourself as a future actuary, someone that is qualified for an actuarial role, rather than someone that's very well qualified for whatever previous role you held. Whether you were an accountant, a teacher, maybe an engineer, you may have on your resume a whole bunch of tasks that really were required in the job that you were doing. But that does not mean that all those tasks are going to help you get an actuarial job. It means that you might have terminology on your resume that's relevant to your past career that really isn't relevant to an actuarial career. On your resume, you really want to make sure that you are appealing to an actuarial employer. And to do that, you have to go through your resume and make sure that everything on that resume is going to help make you a better fit for an actuarial role. You may have to change some language so that actuarial employers understand what you're talking about, because it's very possible that you have done things in your previous roles, but the terminology that you're using or the language isn't properly demonstrating how that is going to help you in an actuarial role. That's what you have to do. Don't leave that interpretation up to employers. Tip number 2 is to be very insightful and reflective on when things go wrong. Now, you hear Austin talking about all the things that he thought about that didn't go as well as they could have during his interview. And not only is he thinking of that, he's deciding and thinking about what he could do better for next time. And that is so important. If you just sit there and realize things went wrong, but you don't actually put plans in place to do better next time or to change things for next time, then it's likely you're going to get the same result. Another thing I find really helpful about taking some time to actually sit down and reflect on where things went wrong is that you suddenly gain a whole bunch more motivation. Taking time to understand where things went wrong and see how you could actually do things better next time, it suddenly gives you hope again, whereas you might feel a little bit down or frustrated or just not feeling like your best self. So really spend at least 30 minutes taking time to reflect on how you could do better next time and what changes you're going to make.
I think a part of what went wrong is we let the conversation drift towards education. And because it was the farthest I had been at a company for interviews, they were asking natural questions about education. And then I probably could have done a better job of honoring those questions, talking about it, but shifting it back towards the end goal, which is myself as a future actuary. Also, one of the things that I know hurt me was she asked for some more examples of Microsoft Excel examples. How have I used it? What does it look like? And I used what I knew to come up with some custom projects of like creating a gradebook and things like that. That was more skills based and use a lot of HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. And I did not have enough examples into that interview that showed off my technical skills. And even though I was confident in my ability to learn, and up to that point, I had not gone through the Excel stuff as far as actuarial. Now, looking back, my resume I've gone through, I think I'm at project 6 now. Or where you're adding the VBA, you're doing all of it. Like I did project 1 and 2, and I felt comfortable with what I could do. But like I did not have enough examples to really speak through. So when they asked me about Excel, I maybe had one thing I talked about, and it was more in a personal project than actually something they were probably looking for. And so even though I didn't get this feedback, my reflection is I need to have better examples ready to go. And so hence the last year focusing on technical skills, uh, so I could have actual examples and more than just the one or two that I think suffice.
Tip number 3, I don't have much to add to this one. Shift the conversation back if it gets off track. Here you're seeing how Austin realizes that he didn't do that as well as he could, but you want to make sure that your interview is focused on the role that you are applying to, because that's what's going to get you the job. Even though the employer might be interested in other things, you can talk about those things, but make sure you're steering the conversation back so that you stay on topic about what you need to talk about with the employer.
Yeah, I think you've really got it down there. I have a feeling that your emphasis and love for teaching really came through, and that made them somewhat hesitant to pull you into a career when, especially on their end, they're thinking, okay, is this someone that's going to be with us long term? Maybe they were a little bit hesitant about whether you would actually want to stick with this career when you had such a passion for teaching and stuff as well. So I do think that, yeah, in future actuarial interviews, it would be really good for you to make sure you are giving that emphasis on why you want to make that transition. And even though you love teaching and stuff, there's this whole new world and this growth that you personally want to achieve that is your motivation for getting into the actuarial career. And also, I'm very confident that if you are more focused on those technical skills, that's going to help as well. I have heard of many people interviewing where the interviewer doesn't even ask about the technical skills, and then later they come back, the employer comes back and says, yeah, we just weren't even too sure if you had the technical skills that you needed for this position. So I think before going into every interview, you should try to make a list of the bullet points, the talking points that you really want to make sure that that employer knows, so that even if it doesn't come up, it's something that you can mention just at the end of the interview if you need to, or even better would be to naturally include it within answers to questions that you do give to them.
Yeah.
So particular things would be that your education, if that's relevant, you'd want to mention any exams that you've passed. You'd want to talk about technical skills for sure. Spend a lot of time there because it's very important. Your communication skills and your relevant experience. So all that is really good stuff to bring up during any interview. And I'd want you to make sure that you're bringing all of those up specifically in an interview.
Okay, this is a tip that I've never given before because this advice actually came directly from this call. That is to go into your interview with a list of the things that you actually want to make sure you are highlighting to the employer. If you go in with that in mind, you are going to know that you have touched on all those important factors that an employer is going to care about, and you're not leaving anything out. It also ensures that you're steering the conversation back, like we talked about earlier. If the employer gets off track, try to figure out how you can get back on track by incorporating some of these things that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One move that I made just in the last month was I just made an actuarial project section right underneath my exams, right at the front. And I think instead of assuming someone's going to look at the back or bottom of my resume, I've now bolded out, I think it's 4 bullets, but project 1 and 2 is 1 bullet since it's adding VBA and things like that. But basically kind of front on my resume, I'm trying to put those projects up. So if they pull up my resume, even if they look at it for 5-10 seconds, they at least see a heading that says actuarial projects. And now we at least have something for them to talk about.
I would actually call that actuarial technical projects so that they know that it's not just actuarial, those are your technical skills as well.
If you just include the titles of the projects that you've done, and by the way, there are a whole bunch of actuarial projects in the AAC if you're interested in doing some, but by just including the title of those projects, you're really not demonstrating to employers what you can do. You actually want to describe those projects and the functionalities and the formulas that you used as part of Excel in order to complete those projects, because that's what employers really care about. They do not care about the name of a project that you did.
And sorry, what section did you say you put that on above? Like, if you're looking at your resume, let me know what your layout of your resume is.
So I have my career profile, and then which has some sentences, and then my actuarial exams, and then my education, and then underneath that is actuarial projects. And then underneath that, at the very bottom, will be my work experience. But I took actuarial projects and prioritized it above my work experience because my work experience is in education, and that's where I think they might move on. And then previously on the back page was my Excel experience, and that's just, I need them to not have to go past my work experience to see it. So that's
Yeah, so in your career profile, and just for anyone watching, career profile is something that I recommend everyone puts at the top of their resume to really just give a quick summary of what makes you an amazing candidate for actuarial positions. So in that career profile, are you mentioning your Excel skills there?
Yeah, I mean, the sentence I have is, so I have, eventually I say, has experience handling multiple projects with a quick turnaround, high attention detail, thoroughly enjoys utilizing Microsoft Excel to create tools for specific tasks, and comfortable with basic programming through Visual Basic Analysis and Python. I don't have specific examples there, but I mention Python, Visual Basic Analysis, and Python.
Okay. Yeah, that you don't need to put your specific examples in your career profile. I like how you have that technical skills section now. And within each of those projects that you've mentioned, are you just putting the name of the project? Or are you also providing a small description of what you did in that project and what you had to use, like what functionalities you had to use in Excel?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read the first bullet point. So
Sure.
under my first project, it says built an insurance premium calculator that used Microsoft Excel functions, parentheses, HLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, etc., parentheses, to survey various policyholder health data to determine premium costs, semicolon, use Visual Basic Analysis to survey a block of client data and policies to calculate expected claims per year, the expected total costs. And so the attributes I put in that project, and then I have another bullet point for another project that says something similar, but not the exact same.
Another thing I had about your resume is it sounds like your education is right there near the top. Since you've been out of school for 11 years, I would actually recommend moving your education down below your work history because that's not going to be near as important as your other stuff there, like your technical projects and your work experience. That's all going to be far more beneficial for employers to know than your education. And when it comes to your job description of your teaching and stuff, is all of that put into a format that really emphasizes how it's relevant to the actuarial career? Or do you think there that you're kind of referring back to like why this is good experience for a teacher to have?
Yeah, I've tried to organize all the statements into more of an actuarial kind of role. So one of the bullets is experience in data entry tasks and keeping databases up to date, versus entering grades or something. Experience in leading training sessions for individuals and moderately sized groups versus saying I'm teaching a class full of high schoolers. And so I've tried to twist it enough where I feel like it's fairly accurate to what I've been doing. One quick note I want to mention, I did get my master's in math in 2019, and I didn't know because that was within, I guess it's getting close to 4 or 5 years now. Is that still worth having towards the top because it's in the field of mathematics and it is still
it's still going to be on your resume. Personally, I would still put your education down below because I think that the amazing work experience that you have and those technical skills and the exams, they're just going to be more important than that.
Okay.
I personally believe.
Okay.
Going back quickly to your job descriptions, another thing that you might find beneficial there is if you actually talk about the results that you were able to achieve in doing these different tasks. So it's when employers look at your resume, they don't just see this list of tasks, they're also seeing all the benefits that you were able to bring to the companies that you worked for and how you were able to benefit them. And then that gives the employer confidence that you can also do that for them as well.
Okay. Yeah, and then having the measurable quantitative ways to represent that as well. I don't have that currently because I still hadn't been able to figure that out yet, but I think that data is there. Just have to find it.
You can take your resume to a whole other level if you include the benefits of the tasks that you did on your resume in your work experience section. That's because it's proving to employers that you're able to get results rather than just do a whole bunch of tasks. Now, when you're trying to think about what the benefit of a certain task was, I like to just think about what would happen if I didn't do that task. Would the company lose money? Would the data become out of date? Like, what is going to happen if you don't do that? And that is ultimately the benefit of doing that task. It is very unlikely that a company is having you do a task that doesn't have any ultimate benefit for them.
You can kind of include it naturally within your bullet point. So you were talking about keeping a database up to date, which I think was your grading. Maybe somehow you can get some sort of, you can figure out what the results of that were, like what were the benefits of that for your employer, so that you can add that in and show employers that you weren't just doing these tasks, you were actually doing things that had an overall beneficial impact for the companies that you were working for.
For sure. Yeah, we do a lot of pre and post test stuff. So even using data to show actual growth, because I actually get plenty of data from students, so it shouldn't be too hard to actually quantify it.
Yeah, for sure.
On the very back of my resume, it has the less relevant stuff. So like leadership positions, presentations. I've kept a lot of my presentations for my master's in math, just from the sole purpose of showing these are deep theoretical mathematical things that I have like done. Constructing paths with Bezier curves, like this is not ever going to happen in actuarial work, but it's a higher level mathematical concept, and so I have a lot of presentations around that. Is it worth it to keep that stuff just to show that these are things that I've done at a high level, but it's not relevant to actuarial work, but it is major accomplishments, at least in this field, to keep them towards the end on the second page?
I would absolutely keep those there. As someone going into the actuarial field, you want to be able to prove that you can do a presentation and that you're comfortable with that. It's part of your communication skills. And I'm not sure if you've ever had the chance to participate in one of our presentation hours in the AAC, but that's also another opportunity that you could take advantage of. However, since you do already have those presentation experiences, it might not be the best use of your time for you particularly, but I would keep those because that's going to prove further to employers that you are comfortable. And that is something that you need to sometimes do in an actuarial role, is you need to do all the math and you need to make these analyses, but then you also need to be able to explain those things to people that didn't work on it so closely, and maybe people that aren't even actuaries. So it helps to be able to prove to an employer that that's something that you're comfortable with. They're probably going to get that sense since you are a teacher, and teachers typically are presenting to large audiences, but I think it would be still beneficial for you to include that, and it's something that you might talk about during your interviews. What is under your leadership?
So all my leadership positions are going to be in the field of education. So one of them is cooperating teacher. This would be when I had a student teacher come and observe me. And so I have 2 different kind of years where that's there. Then building leadership team. So that would be, so we have the staff of teachers in our high school building. I was representing some of the math department to go to that building leadership team. I had Summer Planning Institute. This is someone who takes time during the summer to kind of help form curriculum, work on things around that, where you're establishing your targets for the next year. And so that's just a handful of teachers. And again, I was doing that with a math focus. Link Crew Coordinator, that's just a position where you are one of the leaders helping develop students in a program called Link Crew. And so I was just, as a Link Crew Coordinator, I was someone who was helping with that. And then early implementer, I was testing curriculum one year. So that was one of the positions where they asked me for. And then the last one was small learning community and college and career coordinator, where we were meeting together to come up with, so all of the college and career coordinators, we were meeting together to find ways to establish opportunities for students to look at careers and look at college opportunities and get them exposed to stuff post high school. And so I was on that team as well. So all those were in the field of education, but that's what I have for there.
Okay, great. It sounds like you have lots of leadership experience there. I just want to make sure that you are making sure that when you put those on your resume, you're also kind of talking about how they are going to be beneficial in your actuarial career. So if they are more geared towards education right now, you'll just want to try to change the wording similar to how it seems that you've done for your work experience. And it seems like you have quite a few different bullet points there. So you might either consider keeping the ones that you feel are most related to the actuarial career, or at least ordering them in a way that it's like the best ones are at the top, and then the ones that are less related maybe would go further down the list.
Okay. Right now, all I have is just those titles. So I don't even have
Oh.
do you recommend that I actually put a description, like maybe not have all of them, but choose a handful of them and put a description around them, and then like you mentioned, describing them with more actuarial language, like because I had so many, but like, and I also didn't know how much they geared towards actuarial stuff. I just kind of listed just a whole bunch of names and then dates and then later names and dates. So you think it's worth it to actually talk through how they express my leadership skills?
For sure, because right now, as someone looking at your resume, all they see is a title. And if they have no idea what you did in that position, then they're not really going to understand at all how that's relevant. So basically, you're kind of just wasting space on your resume there. So you could definitely turn that into a powerful section on your resume. It just needs to make sure that employers actually know how that is relevant to your career as an actuary.
Okay. That leads to another question. Let's just say I do that, and I do with 4 of them, and then eventually things grow. Is it ever bad for my resume to exceed, if it's digital, to exceed 2 pages?
I would say that you would not want to go past 2 pages. I think you'll be able to fit everything that you need with your teaching experience. I've seen some people that have like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different jobs that are somewhat relevant to the actuarial career, and their resume tends to get fairly long. But since you've been in teaching, and have you been at the same school for those 11 years?
10 years at one building, and then I'm actually currently teaching at my alma mater, and so I'm doing 1 year there,
Okay.
and so,
Okay, so just
for the most
two
part,
different
yes. Yeah,
positions.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think you should not have a problem fitting it onto 2 pages. I wouldn't recommend going further than that with for an entry level resume.
Yeah, and my understanding is typically if you have 2 different jobs that basically are doing the same functions, you take what I did, I think this is, I took some of the functions, put it under one job, and some of the other functions around the other. I didn't repeat myself at all, but I didn't write down the same thing twice, like at full length for both. Does that sound kind of the right strategy for that?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach to take there.
Just like I recommended including a description of your technical projects on your resume, you also want to do the same thing for any extracurricular activities, leadership activities, and awards that you've won. The titles of your jobs or awards really don't mean anything to employers. You want to explain to them what you did in order to achieve those awards and goals, or what you did in a certain leadership position, because that's what really matters to make you qualified for the job.
You said that you're wondering if your current teaching contract is a big liability in your hiring availability. So could you tell me a bit more about that contract and how it works?
Yeah, a couple things, and a lot of this is just trying to speculate. So I'm not fully sure. I'm just kind of noticing patterns. With one of so there's one place I applied to that they're hiring entry level people. They're looking for new grads, and so they asked me what is my preferred start date. The thing with education is it's very, very much frowned upon to leave in the middle of the year, because you just can't leave your students, or if you can, there's penalties or stuff like that. But more so, it's just a relational sense that you build this relationship with students, and you kind of have this moral choice of it's different than other jobs, I feel, where you can put a 2 weeks or 1 month notice. So I feel like my hiring window's a lot smaller, unless I were to move into a different role next year where I wasn't tied in education. And so what I'm noticing is last spring 2023, I felt like I was getting a little bit more traction than I was this last fall 2023. Yes. And then I had a conversation with a recruiter where they said, yeah, we noticed that you're in education, so they wondered about start dates. And so I've been going under the assumption that it doesn't hurt to apply, even if the position's not for 4 months or 6 months, or you never know. Um, but I've also found that I'm not getting as much traction as I thought I would, especially compared to the previous spring. I had passed another exam. I've done more technical skills. You'd think you'd be getting a lot more notice. Coincidentally, as January starts, I do feel like I'm starting to get some traction more than I had in the fall. So it's weird. So I was wondering, is there a sense where you think recruiters are looking at people in the field of education and kind of know there's a tension with start dates and they're not going to look at a resume unless they're available in May or June? And do you hear what I'm saying? Have you seen this? Do you think that's a real thing? Do you think
Oh yeah, I think it would be a real thing. So for your contract, when does it end?
I believe in May. I'll have to look at
May.
some of it. Or I'd have to look at re-signing in May. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of employers do hire in the fall to start in May. So I'm glad that you are still looking for a job during that time, but you can certainly still get a job now. And I think this time frame right now is going to probably be ideal for you since your contract will be coming up in May. So keep going now. I really like the idea that you mentioned of possibly moving into another role that wouldn't have that contract, because your ultimate goal right now is to become an actuary and get into the actuarial field. So if you're going to have to go a whole nother year without being able to actually get into that job, then it's just going to hold you back from what you really want to do. So if that is a possibility for you, then I would go that route. Hopefully you'll have a job before September of next year. But I would go that route if you can start arranging with the school that you'll move into this other role.
Yeah, it's something that my wife and I are talking about, of just looking at and just insurance roles and things like that. And I've had through LinkedIn some companies reach out and have these much lower level just insurance roles. So like, hey, you might be a good fit. And even though it's not ideally where I want to land, it might actually give me the freedom to be able to go where I want to go. And so from the videos I've watched where are teaching math teachers is a good stepping stone position, I believe it is, except I forgot about the contract. And then the contract is the part where it's like, you might get to where you need to be, but you then have a choice you have to make. And that's something I can't break. And so, or I could, but I don't know if I could do it. So yeah.
Honestly, I think with the experience that you have, the technical skills that you've gained, your exams passed, I think that you will be able to get into that actuarial job. I do think it would be incredible if you didn't end up getting an actuarial job, if you do go into some sort of insurance job that's going to help you get your foot in the door in an insurance company and potentially open up doors for you. And I really don't think you're going to need to go that route. I think you'll be able to get your actuarial job before that even becomes a factor, but that will be kind of your backup plan if it was me. That's what I would recommend.
Well, I appreciate it. The biggest change in the last year, like I said, is I think doing those. I really enjoyed doing those projects, by the way, in Excel. And honestly, it's given me a lot more confidence of things that I can speak to. And so if the conversation is now changing away from, hey, your technical skills, it's more of, oh, it's more your start date, I'm still looking at it as a positive growth. So I appreciate I really like this project, especially the one where we have to correct Jimmy or whatever, this guy who messes up the spreadsheet. And you're like, I have a feeling that this is actually pretty relevant. So thanks for sure. And obviously, and I think that's given me a lot of confidence around talking towards that area. So
you need to prioritize taking time to do technical projects for your resume and for interviews. These are going to help prove to employers that you can actually take all the functionality that's available in Excel and use it. You can take an idea that you have in your head and actually make it work in Excel. You can take a problem and get a solution in Excel. These things are so important for employers to know because they prove your Excel skills. I like to think of these things like driving. If you just take a course in Excel, that's similar to you just reading that driver's manual and then saying you know how to drive. when in fact that's really not true. Just because you read the manual doesn't mean that you can go on the road and drive properly. You're going to need some practice. So you'll likely go to maybe a parking lot where you can actually get a feel for the brake and the gas and all that sort of stuff. That's like doing actuarial projects. You're actually getting your foot in the door, I guess you could say, and using those skills that you've learned from a course and applying them. And that's what really helps you learn. Tip number 9. Now, during this coaching call, we did not talk much about networking. However, that could be a really good way for Austin to be able to break into the actuarial field. Your network is going to help you make connections that you may not even know are going to help you right now. You never know who is going to be able to help you get into an actuarial role. So networking is one of the most important things you can do very early on in your actuarial journey and all the way through. I'm not sure what Austin was doing in terms of networking. It would be great if he is connecting with people on LinkedIn that he knows and also building up a whole map of people that he can actually connect with in order to get access to the people that can hire him in the jobs or the companies that he wants to work for. I call this your Dream 10 map, because basically once you decide on the 10 companies that you really want to work for, you can create a whole map of people that you can connect with in order to get to the people in that company that can hire you. And this would be a really good strategy for Austin to take advantage of, because applying for jobs online is one thing, but you have to get through so many filters and you have so much competition there that going the back route through your network could actually lead to less competition and potentially even jobs that are never even posted online. Tip number 10 is to get support early. Now, when you are starting your actuarial journey, it's really difficult to know what you need to do to succeed. And that makes perfect sense because you've never done this before. How could you possibly know what you need to do when you've never done it before? That's why getting support from someone that is in the actuarial field already or is very closely involved with hiring actuaries, because they are going to be able to help guide you through the qualifications that you need and all the different steps that you should take in order to really succeed. You may have blind spots, you actually probably do, in your qualifications, things you don't even realize right now that you need to be doing in order to make sure that by the time you want to start applying for jobs, you are one of those top candidates that's going to stand out from the competition. If this is the support you need, then check out the Actuary Accelerator Community. This is basically like a manual for becoming a great candidate for actuarial jobs and then getting your first job or an internship. It has step-by-step guides to help guide you through exactly what to do and the order to do it in. There are things like Excel actuarial projects that are going to teach you about Excel, but also actuarial terminology and help you get a sense of what you might actually be doing day to day in an actuarial role. There is support for your communication skills, helping you with your resume and your interview. There's help for exams. We have live tutoring sessions that you can attend to get help with math problems. This is like the all-in-one place to be for up-and-coming actuaries, and there's a whole WhatsApp group in there of all the other members that are there to support and help you along the way, because many of them are already ahead of you on their actuarial journey. They've been through what you're going through, and they have advice and insight that you may not even know you need right now. So to check out the Actuary Accelerator Community and get in, I've put a link right down below in the description so you can go check it out now.